Hey everybody, it's Fred and Bobbie, and we are back with some more hand gestures makes people tune in.
Oh, does
yeah,
it?
I've learned that.
I think that's science, but
yeah.
okay.
So thanks for tuning in, and we are going to answer another one of the questions that have come to us. And this question, what's today's question, Bob?
Has anything ever gone wrong?
In the show?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Not that I remember. I think they've all been perfect. Perfect.
I think he was setting me up for a random facial expression.
Yeah. You know, the truth is, I don't think that I've ever had a completely perfect show. I don't think, you know...
yeah, there's been shows where you've been like, man, that was the show. That was amazing.
Right, but I don't think they're completely flawless. I don't think that's humanly possible, and I don't like to think that it is. I'm happy to live with my flaws a little bit, because that makes it easier to get through a show when something goes terribly wrong.
But we're here really to talk about the nitty-gritty, right? Like
right.
This behind the scenes, yeah, things have gone wrong. Like the serious downward depression that it was.
We had a show where we could not seem to stay upright. Like the show opened with Bobbie tumbling right off the back of an illusion after magically appearing. Then I run out into the audience, and I would always do this. I'd sort of...
I think the first falling off of the illusion wasn't super dramatic. It was a little wobbly and a kind of a step down, but it wasn't dramatic yet.
Right.
You know, it wasn't the graceful dismount I would have hoped for, but
right.
I was still mentally okay.
In your defense, we've always done this. It's an illusion that's on wheels, and the wheels don't lock in place. So she kind of magically appears on this thing that's kind of like being on a skateboard, except it'll go in any direction, not just forward and backward. And this one time, it kind of rolled more than it would.
The ship was also moving, and so...
It was on board a ship. Yeah.
So, anyway.
In the very next trick, I run out into the audience, and there's a point at which I have somebody pull a card out of a deck of cards, and I say, don't worry, I'm not going to be looking over your shoulder, and I kind of walk past them, and I hop up on a seat back and sort of dramatically look back over at them, because that's comedy. Well, this time, I went right off, like landed flat on my back from way up.
Slipped.
Oh my gosh, I went down hard.
And went down. I didn't know this because I wasn't out there. I didn't know this till after the show. At this time, I thought it was all me.
And then later in the show, kind of our big illusion, Bobbie comes, she has to get in and then come back out, and her heel caught on the edge, and she kind of like face planted right there on stage.
I didn't really face plant. That's even more dramatic than it was.
It makes a better story.
Let's just say, yes, but
From my side, it looked like you went right down.
We are telling our audience the truth. We're not dramatically enhancing what was already traumatic.
From my side, it was Bobbie face down.
My face never touched the ground. My heel caught on the prop as I was exiting, and I know my leg stayed in the prop and scraped my leg. I never touched the ground with my face. Stop being more dramatic than... Seriously, you guys.
It was definitely not... But here was the thing, was we...
Okay, it happened to me. Let me tell it. I was bleeding all over the place. From my leg, not my face.
Well, then not all over the place. But, yeah, actually...
No, my blood was all over the place.
I did not, and I didn't know that.
So I went backstage, promptly had a nervous breakdown, and did not want to return, so I got a tech to do what I needed, what I would normally do for the trick that came after that to close the show. I got a tech to go out and do it. And then the finale of the show, ladies and gentlemen, Fred, Becker, and Bobbie, and there was no Bobbie.
There's no Bobbie.
Because I could not stop crying. And the truth is, I'm not even sure. I was crying because it hurt, like my leg was gashed open, but I think I was also crying just from sheer, like, I was mortified. So I eventually came out with, like, you know, a crazy face, and he's looking at me like, what the heck, where were you?
Yeah, I didn't know anything was that wrong.
Got through the bows, ran back off stage, and promptly hid in my cabin the rest of the cruise.
Yeah, we sort of, you know, on a cruise ship, you live with your audience after you do the show, and in this case, we didn't feel
Somebody's going to be watching this video who was like, I was there for that show. Well, I remember you guys falling all over the place.
And we expected, like, comments in the comment cards afterwards, and the only comment there was something like, oh my gosh, that magic act with all the pratfalls was so funny. Like they think we do it that way all the time. I don't know, maybe it looked like it was supposed to be physical comedy, but for us...
No, it did not. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And I was horrified. And
That was
I'm
a
not sure
show-
I've ever recovered from that. I've also fallen off of a different illusion in a different show, a huge corporate show, which was a big...
You're very clumsy.
Yeah, well, you know, it had to do with the costume that we customized an outfit for a corporation, and the people that made the costume didn't get it to me in time, and when they finally gave it to me, it was like the day before the performance, and it was too short. It was like this far too short.
It was sort of spandexy and it would ride up.
And
basically.
so I was like, this is too short, you've got to remake it. And they were like, well, we don't have enough time to remake it, so we'll just add stirrups to the bottom of it. So they stuck an elastic strap underneath my foot to keep it down, and that created a new texture that I wasn't
Made it
familiar
slippery.
with, and
Yeah.
I basically slipped right off the top of a big grand illusion, and I didn't hurt myself in that one, but I did expose the trick.
It's not like that. It's all on you though. I've had plenty of things go wrong, and for some reason, we mentioned in a previous video,
Yep.
I don't typically make a living performing for other magicians. However, there are times we're invited to entertain magicians at their conventions and things like that, which is a really fun time. You get 1,500 magicians together and we put on shows for each other. That seems to be the time where something will go wrong.
Almost every single time. Fred told me this early on, and then it's almost every single performance that we've done at a magic convention, something has gone wrong.
Don't know why.
More where you were concerned in that situation, and then...
Yeah.
And then, because you're in front of your peers, and you're like, seriously, every time. Although, to be fair, we were at a magic convention where I was singing a very serious song, in one of the moments of like when I was really like in this real, it's like big, and then I was like really soft. Someone backstage, their microphone was still on, and so in my really quiet moments, you hear some F-bombs coming from backstage on an open live mic that was backstage.
You're right in the middle of the song. That was a good time.
And I'm just, I'm trying to be all in the moment, and I'm hearing like, F this, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, somebody kill the mic. Kill the mic. So yeah, that was also, anyway, so we've had, yes, the answer to the question, has anything ever gone wrong?
It goes
Of
often,
course.
quite often.
Yes, that's why the show must go on. I think that's why the phrase was invented.
Right.
Because stuff always goes wrong in live theater. I've got numerous stories of things that went wrong in production shows. Usually that's more fun and acceptable though, because in a production show there's so many of you on stage.
You can cover for it.
You can cover for it. Or the audience kind of feels like they're in on like what's happening, because if the cast gives it away, the audience can be in on the joke. Whereas if it's just the two of us, if you mess up a magic trick and you don't recover with comedy, then you don't look like a good magician.
Right.
And we talked about this before, I think, too, in an interview that we did.
Yeah, I'll retell that story real quick, but
I
think you're right.
If I mess up a song, they're more forgiving because they'll be like, oh, she must have been sick, or if it cracked a note or something. Well, the entirety of the song was pretty good, but she cracked that note. So they might think, well, that was a little high for her, or yeah, she must not be feeling good, but they forgive it a little more.
Right. With magic, if you slip up just a little bit, it breaks the spell. It kind of ruins everything about the trick, and there's not really as much, once that is broken, there's not as much entertainment value there. So that can be really hard for magicians, where they'll forgive kind of an off note here and there for a singer. Magic, in fact, messing up one trick can mess up the entire show.
If you let it get in your head. But if you're on the side of the audience already, and you guys are in it together, then if you screw something up, they're on your side, and you just laugh it off. As long as you aren't uncomfortable, the audience is okay too.
I'll give you my favorite example of that was, and you've heard this story before.
They might have heard this story if they watched our recent interview.
Yeah, I was working on a ship that the stage was semi in the round, and just to give you an idea of what the shape of the stage itself was, and above the performance area was a sculpture. It kind of looked like a radiating sun, but there was nothing in the center. It was just the radiating parts. And I had a guy up on stage, and he was supposed to toss these cards up in the air, and I would do the sword trick where I stab the cards out of midair. And it's very dramatic, and it looks very magical. Well, this guy takes the cards, he tosses them up in the air, and they all go right up into the sculpture and stop. And not a single card falls down at all. And I'm standing there with my sword up in the air with nothing to stab. And for that audience, they were laughing so hard. They were literally, people were crying, they were laughing so hard. The volunteer from the audience had perfect comic timing. So he just kind of deadpans it and looks at me like, well. And the audience laughed probably 2 minutes solid. And really there was no point in even, I think the entertainment value was so strong in this situation. The comedy was so strong that a magic trick at that point would have ruined the whole thing. It was just funnier to leave it the way it was. Like that was as good as it could get.
And I think the lesson here, as we wrap up, is that things go wrong. So you can either be a Bobbie or you can be a Fred. And if you're a Bobbie, you let it traumatize you for life and never get over it and move past it. If you're a Fred, you realize things happen, you got to get over it and you got to move on. And you get out of it with humor.
Yes.
I guess. I just made that up on the spot. But
well, what saved my life, two things, two sayings. One is, even Rembrandt didn't paint a masterpiece every single time. So knowing that every now and then the show doesn't go the way you want it to be, that's okay. It's live, it's art. It's okay to have, well, that one didn't work out so well, let's move to the next one.
But you know what's funny about that is that I don't feel that way for myself in my show, like when I'm singing or in production shows. You know, there's been production shows where I just stopped singing because something funny happened and I got off. I was like, I don't know what the words are, and I'll get back in a second. And I don't beat myself up over it. If I saw that. If I crack, I come off stage and go, well, I didn't hit that note very well, you know, and I don't lose any sleep over it. But for some reason, when I mess up the magic, and I'm not like that in my personal life either. I don't let things, you know, I don't dwell on things and think, never get over them and then try again. It's only with the magic tricks. I'm like, nope, fell off that one, we're never doing it again.
I don't lose sleep for myself. I lose sleep that I feel like I let the audience down.
Yeah.
Like I wished I had somehow done a better job for them.
Yeah.
The other side of that is...
Why do you think I have these problems though? Where the magic show is concerned.
Maybe
why can't I let go of it?
You're protective of me, maybe?
That's a good point. Maybe that is true. Yeah. It goes back to that beginning of me being afraid of messing up what was already a really good show that you had when I joined it.
Yeah.
Could it be that? I don't know.
You can let that go.
He's like, just let it go already. It was 10 years ago.
Well, my other point was our job is to make sure the audience is having a good time.
Right.
So if a trick messes up, but people are still having fun, as long as they're still laughing and enjoying themselves, it's not tragic.
Right.
Then mission accomplished. You know, if something goes wrong, yes, I feel bad and I wish it had gone better, but I'm willing to take that on. As long as the audience had a good time, then I did my job.
I can see that, but there's just a couple tricks we won't do again, and it'll be okay. I think that's what I heard.
A couple tricks. One of us won't do again.
So, does that answer that question?
Yes.
15 minutes? Took 15 minutes.
Okay.
We're getting better.
Well, thanks once again for jumping in and joining us at Becker Answers. Please, if you have some other questions, just drop them in the comment box below, and we will.
Becker Answers?
I started calling it Becker Answers.
Okay.
Because instead of ask us questions,
Okay. I like it.
Because we're just answering, whether you want to hear it or not. We're just answering.
Yeah. Well, people ask the question, we got to answer.
True. All right. So do that, and we will see you next week when we put together another video. All right.